Yo, what's up, y'all? Today we have a cool episode with Vinay, Process Street. He's building a business process automation company that's leveraging AI to basically make your teams more effective and more efficient. Check it out. Super impressive entrepreneur building a really cool business. Thanks, y'all. See you on the other side. Dude, so I'd love to kind of dive in and start with just you and who you are and how you kind of got your start as an entrepreneur. I noticed that you kind of worked in sales, digital marketing, kind of maybe previous to starting your own companies. So talk to us about how did you transition from that to kind of building companies? Had you always wanted to be an entrepreneur, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I didn't come from a entrepreneurial family. So no one really in my family or, environment, community was entrepreneurial, and I didn't really have that exposure. But I was always just a bit of a wheeler and dealer. So when I was young, when I was, 11 or probably younger, I would sell candy at school. I got a paper run basically when I was 11. And by the time I was 18, I'd worked lots and lots and lots of different jobs and done all sorts of little side hustles. Through that kind of period of pretty much until the end of high school, I ended up getting my dad was a Cisco trainer, and he taught the Cisco and Microsoft certification programs in Sydney.
Oh.
And so we had this house that was full of routers and firewalls and switches and all this all these computers all networked up and Cat5 cables hanging out the windows. And then I also got into gaming. And so I would build my own computers, and I was top 50 in Counter-Strike in Australia. And I would, I'd have because I had multiple computers at my house, I'd have my friends over and would play LAN games and stuff. And so kind of through that, I got an interest and had a natural inclination for computers. And I ended up getting my CCNA when I was 16, which is my Cisco certification, obviously with my dad helping me to go through that program. And then after I got that, I was able to get a job as a sysadmin when I was 16. And so I kind of was working with CS grads in this, building in the city, managing all these computers. And that was a part-time job that I held through university. So, I kind of had a bit of a background like that, where I was a bit of a wheeler and dealer. I didn't really always know that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I was interested in just business. I was interested in finance. I studied finance at school. Was interested in how businesses work and the stock market and things like that, as well as being interested in computers and technology. And so when I, without making everything really long, I basically got my first job as a software recruiter. That was my first full-time job. And I made good money basically recruiting software engineers for the investment banks in Sydney. And that was a good blend of business and technology and kind of entrepreneurial, where you're managing your own desk. And I was able to make really good money doing that, basically straight out of university. I bought a house. I was able to save a bunch of money. And because I was a grinder, right? I was working super hard, working late nights, working on the weekends, just doing what it took to basically be at the top of my team and hit all my numbers. And after doing that for 3 years, basically straight out of school, I'd accumulated all this holiday. And they basically told me that I had to take the holiday because I wasn't taking any of it. And by law, I had to take it. So then I was kind of forced to go on this 4 or 5 week, I think it was a 5-week holiday, where I backpacked around Southeast Asia, went through Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam. And I had so much fun on that trip. And I was spending way less money than I was making, basically just with my, annual leave payment that was coming in. Like, what do I even need all this? Like, why am I working so hard? Like, it was way less fun. I was just grinding, wearing a suit every day, going to the office early in the morning. And I'm like, do I even like need, like, what's the point in like earning all this money if I'm just like not able to have fun? That was kind of like a little bit of a seed for me. And so I kind of came back. I kept working for another year. I was thinking about it. And I basically decided that I was going to just do a really long trip, which you've probably seen like a bunch of Australians do. There, I had like lots of data points of people who would go off and go backpacking for 6 months or 12 months. That was like a way more common like thing to do in my community than it was like to start a business, for example. And so I'm like, okay, I may as well just do that. I'm like 23, 24. If I'm going to do it, you may as well do it when you're younger. And you're going to get a different experience. Like I could keep working for 10 years and, maybe get a house and try to pay some of that off or something. And then maybe try to go on a trip with my 30s. But it's going to be a totally different experience. You're not going to be able to, when you have more money, buy back what that experience would be like to do it, like early 20s. And so I basically had made the decision that I was going to go do this trip. I also did a lot of work to kind of de-risk my situation. So I already got a house, which is, one of the main reasons you don't want to break your kind of like employment period, right? Is for getting a mortgage. So I kind of like done that. And I made sure that I was leaving, crushing all my numbers so that I was very employable if I needed to come back and like get a job. And I basically I had 9 or 12 months of savings. Like, that's kind of what I plotted out that I could last for, and quit and just went traveling. While I was like winding down my apartment and winding down like my job, I read The 4-Hour Workweek. And I read it because I just heard that it was kind of like a good travel book, right? For like an idea to like traveling like that. And then in that he talks about how he like built a business and then continued to travel. And I was like, wait a minute, that was like a great idea. I'm already going to travel, so I basically just copied the model in that book, and I launched an e-commerce store in the 6 months that I was kind of leading up to leaving. And that e-commerce store started making $1,500, $2,000 a month. Which was enough to live in Thailand or whatever and keep going. And eventually sold that for not much, but another 6 months of runway basically. And then basically just kept going. Yeah. And then I did that for like 10 years. And basically just ran a bunch of different websites and different internet companies. Continuing to basically like build something small, like flip it, try to build something a little bit bigger, like flip it, and kind of did that all the way to Process Street.
That's sweet. Okay, I have some questions and we can get into Process Street, your current company. So what version of CS did you play? 1.5, 1.6?
The very first version that I started playing was beta 4. Yeah. So 0.4 basically. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Gotcha. That's old school. Totally. I think we were obsessed with CS like 1.5, and then when 1.6 came out, most of my friends now switched to like basically playing EverQuest and like the MMO RPGs. I don't know if you ever got addicted to those games.
Yeah, World of Warcraft. Played that for a little bit.
Totally. Now we still play, like my friends back then, from basically, I don't know, like middle school, I guess, we still play a game called Overwatch.
Yeah, I play Overwatch. Yeah, what you say?
Yeah, you do? Do you like play it?
It's like Team Fortress, right? But aliens.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. Because you get on, it's low commitment. You get on, you have fun. Like I think the Elo system like does a good job of like giving you competitive matches.
Yeah.
Are you like obsessed with grinding Elo, or are you more like a casual player? Like, what's your approach to Overwatch?
No, I'm casual. I haven't played probably in a year or something, but I definitely played a lot when it came out.
Totally.
It's my go-to, like, if I just want 15, 20 minutes to play, I'll play Overwatch.
Yeah, get it, like, especially like after a long day, like you get in, you get a game or two, have a beer, chill, kind of unwind for your day. That's the best. Okay, so that's cool. So you started playing 1.4. Did you play any
Point,
competitive?
point, oh, point.
Point four.
We're at point four. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. So
Yeah. This
did
is
you
way,
play in
way
any
before
elite?
version one came out. Yeah.
Yeah. Were you like a competitive player or were you
Yeah.
more? Okay.
Yeah.
Got.
Sometimes, but I never got super into it. Yeah.
I understand like the need to kind of like build the best PC to get like your frames up and like make sure you're dominating your friends. I used to love like having LAN parties, but back then like the towers were so heavy, you got to like
Yeah.
basically
You
have
need a whole car of equipment. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, and you're like this little kid trying to cart this around. What's your ethnic descent? Like previous to Australia, are you Southeast?
My father's from India. My mom's from Australia.
Okay, okay, gotcha. That's cool. Have you been to India recently or?
Not since I was 12. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. That's cool. I always do. I mean, we've interviewed a couple of Indians on this podcast, which is always fun. Like, there's some people building some cool shit in India, which
Yeah,
like
totally. I think India's going to crush it over the next couple of decades.
I think there's something around like it's funny you brought up like just hustling and just grinding, and I think that seems to like nobody in my family is entrepreneurial. Like, there's no reference point, like. I asked my parents, I'm like, is there like some rich uncle that we have that I can ask about business? Like, is there anybody? They're like,
Yeah.
no, all fucking doctors or, government employees. There's no like reference point, So I totally hear you on just like kind of being motivated and figuring out yourself how to do it.
Yeah, there's a bit of that like immigrant like mindset as well.
100%. Yeah, immigrant mentality. As a good comedian of my friend of mine quotes another comedian. He didn't come up with it, but I like the phrase.
Okay, time to onboard a bunch of new employees, which is a whole process. And it's just one of hundreds we have around here. Wow, that's a lot of processes. Used to stress me out. But then we found Process Street. Process Street.
So did you kind of devise the idea for Process Street, like based on sort of your previous companies, or how did you kind of come to like this being your business?
Yeah, no, exactly. So I was at the point where I was running a like portfolio of websites, like lots of different content and lead gen and just kind of like different types of low tech internet businesses, basically.
Yeah.
And that just, and I had about a team of 20 people, mostly in India and the Philippines. And that just kind of got to the point where this was early, this was 2011 or something like that. And, there was no Slack. There was no, I think Asana maybe just launched. There was Google Sheets was pretty early. You were using Skype to kind of communicate, and there just wasn't much tooling for like running a remote team like that. And some of these tools were coming up around, collaborating on more projects, which would be more of like your or data, right? Which is like your spreadsheets or your Asanas. But there wasn't really anything focused on process management where you basically have very defined, repeatable processes that you just want people to follow. You're not really designing or brainstorming or creating new ways of working or doing things. You're just focused on executing a known playbook at the highest quality and efficiency. Which is basically a lot of what we were doing. There was a lot of really repetitive work, just like maintaining these websites, creating content, loading up A/B tests on campaigns, just like do this 100 times a day, right? That was a lot of what we were doing. It wasn't very creative, coming up with these new ideas and strategies. It's just like, look, we need to run 500 experiments a week. Like, let's go, right? And then,
yeah.
And so couldn't find anything that did that. Most of the tools, even today, like if you want a project management tool, you're gonna get a lot of flexibility, right, in how that tool gets created and managed and maintained. And there's a lot of opportunity for people to rename the task or change the cell or put in like a number when it should be a letter, or make the file a doc instead of a PDF, or like all these areas where there's like this flexibility, which kind of lets you do a lot of things. But if you need something done in a very particular way, and allows people to create mistakes, Process Street is like a platform in that world where people collaborate over software and data and forms and tasks and projects. But like there's more of a builder or like a process designer model, like role, and then there's a user role or process executor role. And the designer gets to design exactly how the process needs to run. Like this needs to be done, and this person needs to get alerted, and then 3 hours later, this needs to be done, that this field needs to be filled out. It has to be a number field. This file needs to be uploaded. It has to be a PDF. And like you can, and then once that PDF is done, it gets put into this Google Drive folder, and it gets named exactly this exact naming format structure. Like every time, like you can create this very exact process, right? And make sure that it's followed every time, 100% of the time. And there's like software and automation and AI that's assisting with that process to make it like less of a lift for whatever humans are involved in. That's what the product is, but also kind of how we got there. Yeah.
That's cool. So how did you kind of define like the customer, like initial sort of ICP? Did you sort of look for like companies that were like the companies you were building, or, did you sort of meet people just through networking to kind of get that initial sort of kindling started in terms of traction?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, we targeted small businesses that were just looking to get their processes organized, usually targeting the owner of the business and letting them kind of decide, maybe I need it for everything, or maybe I need it just for these few processes. Through that, we started to get like some traction. We did a lot more kind of like content marketing type work just around like process management and business process management software, which is just the general category that we're in. And then through that, we're able to kind of see where there was more traction and where there was more value being delivered. I'll say still today, we are a horizontal product, and we can service an entire business. So we have plenty of customers that, pay us hundreds of thousands of dollars and have all their thousands of employees in from every team, and use us as the central repository for all their processes and workflows, because we kind of have these 4 products. We have the main workflow product, which is the BPM tool. We have a pages product, like a wiki, and then we have a forms product that's like a form builder, right? And then we have a data sets product that's kind of like a spreadsheet type product. And then they all work together. So you can bring in like all your processes and use us that way. But actually the more common use case is it's more being used in a specific department or function. And so as we kind of like saw how, the feedback from customers and what customers were buying and expanding and retaining, where there was more value being delivered, it's really these like compliance and process driven teams and departments. So for us, it's more like HR and finance are 2 of the big ones. If you think that more like marketing or product development, they're more kind of like in this creative creation kind of like world. Whereas in HR and finance is all this, like they have to follow laws, right? Like in everything that they're doing in their jobs. So legal is a pretty good one as well. But so the way that they need to do things has to be very particular, or else they go out of compliance, right? There is no flexibility on testing how we're going to do this like HR compliance like submission, right?
Yes.
It has to be this exact way, right?
Yes.
And same with finance, the way that you're doing your books and doing your reporting, you're usually following some type of standard that like someone else has defined, and you're just making sure that it is like aligned with that standard. Otherwise, your bookkeepers, your accountants are not going to be able to read like your books if you're going and doing some other like type of standard, right? Real estate is another big vertical for us. So same kind of deal. There's all these laws and rules and forms and things that just have to be done that exact way every time. And so that's another good segment for us. Yeah.
Totally. I imagine healthcare too. There's all sorts of compliance.
Healthcare is, yes. We do have quite a few hospitals that use us. Yeah. That's a good one.
That's so cool. That's sweet. Okay. So this is the first business, I think, that you have raised sort of venture capital for.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Other ones
Yeah.
sort of.
I did try one startup before, which was like my very first attempt at a software product. That was like it was basically like what TikTok is. It was like something in that world, trying to create like short interactive videos for phones. It was, kind of different models. But there was a whole bunch of products back then. It was basically on the iPhone 3G, iPhone 4, like that kind of era. And there was a whole bunch of video products that launched and got a bunch of traction, or not, but all died because basically the phones and the phone networks couldn't handle video yet. It was too much. The data was too expensive. It would kill your battery. That was like the first startup. We basically just raised like a small friends and family round, went through an accelerator, and then shut it down.
It's like these social app companies, like there's so much capex to them too in the early stages, right? Like you need millions and millions of dollars to hire engineers, and then like your revenue payoff is like 5 years after you start the company. And like, sure, it's like steep, but it's that's an interesting.
And back then, like, not even YouTube could survive. YouTube's from that era, right? And YouTube couldn't afford to pay their bills. Like YouTube would have been dead if someone like Google didn't acquire them, when Google can basically lose money on the data center for decades, essentially, until this product becomes something. And that's even with Google's, like, Google has some of the cheapest data center like capacity in the world. And they still, have to burn for 10 years.
Are you seeing that a little bit like with an AI sort of business? I mean, the server costs probably make up a significant part of like any IT
AI,
budget, or is
well, the way that most people are going to be using AI is really, really cheap. It's like if you're using AI and it's part of a SaaS product, then you're not managing your own compute. You're just using an API of someone else's. And
right.
You're just getting charged based on like usage, right? You don't have these like CapEx expenses. It's a variable expense. And you can just build into your pricing model, right, a way where you charge customers as their usage goes up. And so you just put a margin on it in some way, right? There's different ways to do that. So it's pretty much never going to be a problem for most software companies.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a great point. So what's it been like kind of running a venture-backed company, like in comparison to your previous companies? How's it different?
Pluses and minuses, right? Like the big plus is obviously you have more money.
Yeah.
And so you're not at this, or, when you're running a normal bootstrap business, until you get probably pretty big, which I never got any of my businesses to that stage. It's only a few months of cash basically at any point in time. And if you're not managing that correctly, or something bad goes bad, or you have a bad month or something and your revenue drops by half, then you get very stressed out. Whereas knowing that you have like years of cash in the bank, is nice for the psyche. But then on the flip side, like with venture, you then get to the point where you run out of that money, and then you need to go like refill the coffer. And so you kind of don't have this like perpetual like anxiety, but you have this like slow building anxiety for like a year and a half, and then it peaks and then it comes down again.
Yes, that's so true. I mean, so we bootstrapped for like 8 or 9 years. We got to like 10 million in revenue, and like we were profitable, pretty profitable. And then we're like, let's raise venture, and the stresses are like way different. I mean, it's the same company. We've been running the same company for almost a decade, over a decade, I guess, and it's totally different. And it's funny, sometimes I think, I'm like, man, I didn't appreciate so when you look back fondly on like pre-venture days, you're like, I had different stresses, but I'm not sure if they were better or worse, because now you're staring against you have to get growth. There's no other option. You just have to do it. So yeah,
I don't know, man. Like 10 million bootstrap, that seems like you've got the best of both worlds if you get to that size, because then you kind of have, I was basically going to say, the second big benefit of like having more like cash in the bank and runway is that you basically get to hire more help, right?
100%.
And so that makes your personal life, assuming you hire the right people, can take off a lot of like annoying tasks and just late nights and burnout that you can't really afford to offload sometimes in a bootstrap business.
No, that's so true. I mean, I will say, like, for my personal quality of life and like the ability to hire like really excellent people that have kind of had like previous at bats at this thing that we're doing, that's been a huge thing for us. And like you kind of shift like where you are, even on like your, if you think about like hiring, like if you're trying to hire at a certain skill percentile relative to the market, you get to like shift, one standard deviation.
Yes.
And so you can now afford to do that. And the output is like twice as good, so that's been super cool for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I'd say that's probably the biggest benefit.
Oh yeah. You just work with people. You're like, oh shit, like this person like knows what's up. Like this is great. Is your team fully remote? Like, are you guys building a remote company?
Yeah. We've been remote since day one because I was already a nomad in the beginning. So yeah, I mean that's part of like why I wanted to build a SaaS company in the first place, because it's a business model that like aligns with being fully remote, right?
Where's most of your team located these days? US or
half US, half Europe. So most of our like product and eng is in Europe, and then all like sales and CS and stuff, solutions consulting is in the US.
You seem like a guy that's like put a lot of thought into like how you optimize your own schedule and week. Like maybe what's your week look like?
So I basically have like Tuesdays as a focus day, where I do no meetings, and then I'm pretty much just meetings the rest of the week.
Is there like a theme to each day? Like you're like, okay, like sales meetings on one day, this meeting on that day, anything like that?
No, because I guess because the team's remote, it's more optimized around like the time zones and what's the most convenient times for like the team to basically versus like me setting, putting everybody in a cadence around like how I want to work.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's your sleep and wake time and gym time? Like what's your personal kind of hygiene routine around health?
Yeah. So sleep is usually like 12:30 to 8:30 something.
Okay. Okay.
And
reasonable.
And I try to always get 8 hours. So maybe like 12 to 8 or even 12 to 8:30 or something. Then I'll either go to the gym in the morning. If my first call starts at 10, then I'll go to the gym straight in the morning. But if I have early calls, then I'll probably just do my calls, and then go to the gym afterwards, which is worse because it's like busy, especially in New York. Then if I have to go at 6 or 7 p.m. But I usually go to the gym 5 days a week. And then I just jog to the gym, and then I do resistance training. And then the other 2 days, I try to do something like go for a bike ride or something. I city bike a lot around New York too, to just get some extra
dangerous. Did your fund make you do a key man insurance policy?
Yeah, just for that.
Totally. I like to go on hikes, and obviously I let people know when I'm on vacation and like not reachable, which is rare, but I try to let people know. And our fund's always like, "Are you okay? Did you get eaten by a fucking bear?" And so it's just the nature of the game. That's cool. Okay, what gym do you go to? Do you go to an Equinox, or are they awesome gyms in New York?
I'm in Greenpoint, near Williamsburg. So I don't know. I just go to the closest gym, which is a CrunchFit, basically. But there are some better gyms that I might go to occasionally when I have time. But it's going to cost me like an extra 30 to 60 minutes to do it. Then that's more like an outing than it is like a workout.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. When I used to live in New York, like I lived in Astoria, and so if I had a nice Saturday open, I'd like take the train into Manhattan, go to like the Equinox down on I think it was the Upper East Side Equinox, and just get like a nice 2-hour lift in, walk down Central, Park. Is those are good Saturdays. And so when you think about like driving forward initiatives at Process Street, like where's your focus these days, just sort of as founder CEO?
Our focus has been pretty much this year has been on AI. So we've already launched 3 AI features. We launched first one, which is like a generative workflow builder. So you can just say, I want a workflow on, accounting in France or something, right? Like on my doing like my end of year closeout tax for a small business in France, right? And it will basically build out like an example kind of template workflow, but it's pretty smart. It will like know a lot about like the France accounting laws, right? And we'll put a lot of that stuff into the workflow for you. But it's kind of like, if you think about it, that's kind of like an infinite template generator, essentially. That was the first project we did. We were just getting started. Like the team was learning about GPT. Then we built an importer. So you can essentially import any process document and it will turn that into one of our interactive workflows. So, and the good thing about this is that it can be in any format. So you can upload a document. So this is like a document explaining how we do something, Word doc or Google Doc. You could upload a spreadsheet that's kind of like an example of like, here's 20 people that we onboarded with all their tasks in a spreadsheet, and it will kind of like be able to process through the spreadsheet. Or you can upload like a flow diagram, like a BPMN, a Visio diagram, right? Like a Lucid diagram that basically shows like the process and flow. It will understand, be able to process like any of those, and then turn it into like a process tree workflow with forms and assignments and roles and due dates and handoffs and approvals and like all the things that would kind of happen in there. It can kind of build all that out for you. So that's really, really cool. That's becoming like super, super valuable. And then this week, actually, or last week, we just launched our AI task. And so that actually lets you start using AI inside your workflows. So if you have like an employee onboarding workflow and, part of that is you have some forms that have their name and start date, maybe their resume or something, or some information about them, you can, have it generate a welcome message for them or have it generate personalized emails. You can have it do sentiment analysis, or you can have it do math calculations, or you can have it do transformation of data, or like whatever you want. So through this workflow, you can kind of like pull in some stuff, send it to the AI, and get some results, and then continue to use that. And then we're also looking at basically like we're focused on how do we deploy all the other like AI technology that's coming out, and how do we deploy that across the organization to drive like operational efficiency. So how are we using AI in sales, in marketing, in engineering, in HR, like in everything that we're doing. We're testing like all the products that are coming out. One, to just drive more efficiency in our business, but 2, to also educate our team, right, on the technology. So
that's sweet.
That's our focus. Yeah.
I have so many questions. So how are you sort of spending your time and like learning about sort of the frontier technology and use cases in your business, maybe to implement into your product, to your customers? How are you kind of encouraging and aligning like your team to do that? I think a lot of growth stage companies struggle with like balancing, like executing on known strategies, but leaving enough time to explore unknown opportunities that might be better. So I'm curious about how you think about that and like how you direct your team to think about that.
I mean, one of our values is continuous improvement. And so we already have some kind of like value-based culture in there that encourages iterating and experimenting on whatever you're doing, aggressively. And so there's already like some capacity reserved for iteration and experimentation in most of what we do. And so it's really just like slotting this into that capacity and saying like the experiments and iterations you should be doing right now, it should be focused on should be around AI, right? And just using that as the kind of focus for those experiments. But the culture of like continuous improvement and iteration, that's part of like what, our product has a continuous improvement feature, right? Like you can iterate on your workflows and you can track their performance over time as you run iterations on workflows, right? And so it's just part of our product and part of our culture. I was like improving your systems. the first part of your question, which is like, what do I do? My focus when I'm like getting hands on is usually in marketing. So I'm basically I'm testing the marketing AI tools basically, and that's kind of my I'd say my strongest like kind of operating vertical. So there also some stuff in kind of like sales, right, which is a little bit of like crossover of kind of RevOps sales type tools to make, the SDRs and things like that.
And like, I'm sure you guys use Process Street, right? Probably
Oh yeah,
for your.
yeah. Every team uses.
Do you have a rule like you can't use Asana or other things, or are you sort of more?
No. We use different products because like it's good for the team to also see how other products work as well. So we're pretty open to people trying tools.
That's cool. That's awesome. What are you excited about for the back half of the year as far as product initiatives, anything like that?
Yeah, so we're now looking at pointing AI towards things like integrations and more automations. So now we've done some of the generative stuff. Can we basically use it to power some other things? Like, for example, can it generate like integration code for customers on demand? So trying to kind of use it to make kind of like empower more powerful like no code type workflows, right? Where things where you would have previously needed an engineer to go and build that, can we kind of like just turn that into a prompt for the customer, and kind of, cut out that like experience of the code and make it feel like they're more talking to an AI, but actually on the back end, it's like writing code for them. It's starting to get a bit more kind of technical and advanced with some of the features. We've been kind of starting with the easy ones, and we're building up to the more complex ones. Yeah,
that's sweet. Do you feel like if you look at your career and sort of the businesses that you've built, do you feel like this is one of the most intellectually gratifying ones, or sort of like, is that intentional even? Because it seems like this is a very complex business. It's technical. You're at the edge of technology.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, there's never been anything that I've gotten to anywhere close to this scale that has this level of like complexity.
Yeah,
both from a technology perspective, but then also from like just a business operations perspective as well. And so I think just the fact that there's so many moving pieces, keeps you very intellectually engaged. Especially when you're trying to stay up to date on like what's new in sales, and then what's new in technology, and what's new in like, user experience. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that has allowed me to do it for so long, is because it's just constantly changing. Otherwise, like historically, I get bored of things pretty easily.
I'm the same way. It's like, that's probably the thing that I enjoy most about the job, is that it's not boring. It's always stuff that, as you look kind of to the next, I don't know, let's say 30 years of your like career, do you have a sense, like, do you want to stay sort of working in technology? Do you have plans of retiring when you hit like, I don't know, a certain number or age? Like, give me insight into your psyche there.
Yeah. No, I don't think I will retire. I think I wouldn't mind being at a place where I could like take some longer kind of like breaks, basically. So I wouldn't mind taking a year or two off here or there, like in between things. But I think I'd probably keep working or running businesses or investing or something in that world like forever, basically. And I just may like adjust the intensity of the type of business that I run, right? So I may, I haven't decided exactly what I want to do, but I don't think I'll be like fully being the CEO of venture-backed companies until I die. But, maybe I could be minority owner in multiple companies, or maybe run like some companies that have a bit more flexibility around, basically that they're more bootstrap companies where I don't have these like responsibilities to investors and shareholders, and I can kind of control the amount of work a bit, a bit more. But no, I don't think I'll ever just be doing like nothing. Yeah.
It's interesting because like, when you're sort of building a tech business, like your upside is infinite. And so like you sort of feel compelled to maximize like every waking moment of your work life. It's funny because you started sort of your journey in entrepreneurship, like reading the 4-Hour Work Week, which is all about like, it's not about working 4 hours. It's about like maximizing the efficacy of every hour, but like minimizing the amount of hours, right? So like, maybe you're doing 10, 15, 20 hours a week, but now you sort of found yourself in like a high growth, like software company where the culture is like you're grinding. So like, how do you feel sort of about that?
I think, well, firstly, the 4-hour work week is not necessarily about minimizing the number of hours. It's about like maximizing kind of productivity towards whatever you want that to be, right? So if that is that you want it to be like chilling on a beach, but I don't want to chill on a beach for, an extra 50 hours a week. Like, especially like if I can already chill on a beach for 20 hours a week, like,
what's the incremental value of chilling for more?
Yeah, I don't really like need another 50, right? Like,
that's true.
So one is like you basically get that time back to do stuff with, and you can use it to chill on the beach, or you can use it to make more money. And so coming from the base that where I was, I didn't have enough money to do anything, right? Like I barely had a few months of living expenses as savings. And so to me, that was more important than getting more beach time. It was extending my, getting closer towards financial freedom, right? So that gave me a lot of opportunities. So that's kind of what I chose to do. I don't think that I'll ever try to get to a point where I'm only working 4 hours a week and I'm, doing like chilling for the rest of the time. But yeah, maybe in a few businesses time when I'm, closer to retirement age, I might consider businesses that only do take me 10 or 20 hours a week to run, and kind of design them that way.
How do you think about like maximizing the productivity of your team? Do you track and do you care about hours that your team works, availability, anything like that? Or are you sort of like, listen, here are the goals, work when you can and work as hard as you can?
Yes, the way that we do it is we run like OKRs and we're outcome focused. Then we obviously, the hiring process is one of the most important pieces of that. It's like hiring the right people. And then education and tooling, right? Where we try to educate people on how to become very productive and use a lot of like automation and technology to make themselves more productive. And, we do this, like we have like an inbox zero like course, and we have different basically productivity training and tooling and technology training that we provide. Also just like building that stuff ourselves, right? Having strong ops teams that are basically automating as much as possible in the business, that just automatically makes people way more productive. So yeah, trying to build it into the culture, trying to hire the right people. But we don't, we have a pretty mature adult culture where we set clear expectations and we give people a lot of room to achieve those.
I love that. Like a course on maintaining inbox zero and like why that's valuable. That's cool. That's really neat. Did you write that course or did you?
No, I was about to say I can hook you up with the team that does it.
Yeah, I would love that. Because I think there are a lot of things that at least at least I take for granted that like seems obvious, like kind of
I'll give them a shout out. It's a company called Leverage. If you just search Leverage Consulting or something, Leverage Productivity, something like that.
What are some tells in the hiring process that you sort of have understood to indicate like high levels of engagement and productivity that you've seen in your career?
Like normal stuff like what have you built before? Like show me times. Like common questions that I'll ask is like, show me like what are some ways that you've used tools or technology or systems to improve your own productivity workflow, either at work or personally or in a side hustle that you had. I want to see people that like have a mindset of constantly looking for ways to make the way that they work easier, right? Another good one is just through the hiring process, like how quickly are they getting back to you? How much do they engage in the different tasks that you give them? Are they, having trouble getting on the Zoom call? Do they book the Calendly appointment within 15 minutes or within like 2 days? And so and then we'll give them a project, right? A lot of the time there'll be a project around like something to do with like using Process Street or using some other like tool or system, and it's kind of looking at the details of those projects and basically watching through the hiring process. Like, are they good at tweaking like advanced levers inside systems and tools as they're using them, right? Are they basically a responsive, fast learning power user of tools and technology, which a lot of that comes from like kind of looking through all the things that they all the touch points through the hiring process and then seeing like, oh, that was fast, or that was clever, or that was interesting, right? Like, and trying to find those kind of like standout moments that make the way that they interact or the projects that they do or the tools and technology that they're using show that they kind of have some type of like edge to them that the average candidate doesn't.
Yeah. So where can people find you, your company, if they want to maybe become a customer, refer a customer, or, apply to join your team?
We, the website process.st is our main website. There you can sign up for a trial, play with the product. Our YouTube channel, if you just search Process Street, YouTube, or our Twitter, which is Process Street, or my Twitter, Vinay P10. We also have a partner program to Google Process Street Partners. If you wanted to refer someone, we have a partner program you can go through.
Cool, man. Really appreciate you coming on the frontier, dude. And it's awesome to learn about you and your company and companies.
Awesome, man. Yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It's been a blast. Look forward to doing it again soon.
Thanks for listening to the Frontier Podcast powered by Gun.io. We drop 2 episodes per week, so if you like this episode, be sure to subscribe on your platform of choice and come hang out with us again next week and bring all your internet friends. If you have questions or recommendations, just shoot us a Twitter DM at The Frontier Pod, and we'll see you next week.
Did I just freeze?
Yeah.
It's all right. It's cool to learn about you.
Yeah.
Man.